You know.
Okay, man.
So I would like to start from the very beginning and ask you about your childhood. What are some of your fondest memories of growing up in the Golden State of California?
Well, interestingly, I grew up in Texas.
There you go.
I did. I had a, a remarkably good childhood. My family had a ranch, and so I learned at an early age how to fix things and drive tractors and bale hay and take care of cattle. And, in the middle of the night, I'd go out and help deliver a baby calf. And, I learned how to do all this stuff. I learned how to ride
Yeah.
horses, which in the movies has helped me even on Horizon. I mean, when Kevin called me, he said, "Man, I need you and your horse skills on this." And I went, "Okay."
Wow.
So if I had been there when you were there, you would have seen I do a lot of racing up and down the wagon train, and spurs and
The the old thing, right?
the whole thing. Yeah, it's fun.
Wow. It's
Fun.
terrific. So I guess it's just you had like a perfect childhood, like a adventurous childhood in a way, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
taught you a
yeah,
lot of things also that would come in handy like later
you
on.
know, back when I was a kid, the drinking age was 18, not 21. And I was 15 and I could get into any bar, anywhere, all the time. It was just crazy. I don't know, and I got pulled over one time by a police officer, and it was a bunch of friends of mine. We all had beer. We're all drinking beer and I'm driving. And he walked over to the car and looked at me and said, "Todd, don't make me have to go call your father." So he made us pour the beer out and send us on our way.
Just like
And,
that.
and I was driving.
Yeah, yeah.
That would never happen today.
No, absolutely not.
So,
It's
but in
not
those days,
it.
in those days, Austin which is where I am now. Austin was a small town, 225, 230,000 people. Today, it's over 2 million. Big difference.
Talk about growth.
Yeah. So
Well, I'm.
I lived in Los Angeles for
Mhm.
39 years. And then we moved back to Austin a few years ago. And, it's not the same place it was.
But it's more like it's is it more peaceful than LA still?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes. It has its moments of being crazy, but yeah, but yes. But I miss Los Angeles. I just don't think I'd want to live there right now.
Yeah. Um, crazy, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were the movies a big part of your life growing up? And can you recall the very first film that you saw at the theater and what kind of impression it left on you?
Movies were a big part of my childhood, but only because I like to go see them.
All right.
So my father would, take us on Saturdays to see a John Wayne Western. And, I remember as a kid, I saw Planet of the Apes, the original
The
in the
Charlton Heston
theaters.
one,
And
yeah.
that movie like blew my mind. Um, and my mother, that's really where I think it's how I ended up in the movie business and became an actor. Is my mother was a movie nut. And, she would wake me up on school nights when I was supposed to get up and go to school and say, "You got to come watch this movie." And, it was like late
Yeah.
at night. And it would be a Marlon Brando movie or Gregory Peck or Robert Mitchum and, some of those guys. And, those guys they became the, the reason I became an actor. I wanted to be like
Well,
Marlon Brando and I wanted to be like John Wayne and I wanted to be like Robert Mitchum. And I'm lucky, you know, I'm old enough that I got to meet all of those guys. I got to meet all of them.
Wow.
And I worked with Kirk Douglas in one of my earliest on-screen movie roles, which is a funny story. I'll tell you later, but
I love to hear that.
yeah, it's a good story.
So you kind of already answered that the next question I was going to ask you, which is that you started acting with a bang in your early 20s in Walter Hill's 48 Hours. And the question was, had you been dreaming about becoming an actor, or did it just kind of
No,
fall on your lap, so to speak? I mean, was there a game plan, or just kind of
it was a
happened?
complete accident, fluke. And I'll go back a little before that.
Mm-hmm.
I was never in the theater department. I never did the school plays, never was on stage. And if I ever was, I was painfully shy, you know, because I didn't like all these people looking at me.
Yeah,
And
I get it.
so when I was in college and I was a business major, not a theater major. And, you know, my father was a big businessman in Austin in those days. And I was sort of the chosen one to step in and take that, you know,
Yeah, following his
and take,
footsteps.
right. And I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know what else to do. So as I said, we had this ranch, and I used to go out to that ranch because that's where I could think, you know, I could go by myself. And so I literally left the University of Texas in my fraternity house that day and was driving on my way to the ranch so I could go, you know, fix the fence and check on the cows and, you know, think
Yeah.
about what I wanted to do. And I'm driving down the highway and I see a bunch of trucks on the side of the road, and I can't tell you why, but I just went and I pulled over. And the next thing I knew, I was out of the car and I walked up to the gate of this ranch property where they were making a movie. I could see the movie lights, and they mistakenly thought that I was the son of the person that owned that ranch. So the security guards and the assistant directors, everybody came over and said, "Oh man, this is great. We're so glad you could come. And, you know, what's your name?" And I said, "Todd." And they said, "Todd, come on in. Would you like to meet our director?" And I went, "Yeah." So they take me over to the director, who I didn't know it at the time, but he was an Academy Award winner. And it was a big movie. I didn't know what it was, but so after about 2 minutes, the director says, "Would you like to come rehearse the actors with me?" And I went, "Yeah." Right. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been sitting at my fraternity house eating fried chicken at the University of Texas. And so he walks over, and there's, you know, it's in Texas where this movie's being made. It's outside of Austin. And he says, there's all these actors sitting underneath a tree, a big oak tree. And he says, "Hey, everybody, this is Todd. Todd's going to help us rehearse today." And all the actors go, hey, how are you? And every single one of them I knew. I recognized them. Willie Nelson was in the movie and the star of the movie. And Diane Cannon, who at the time was married to Cary Grant, and Amy Irving, who at the time was married to Steven Spielberg. They were all sitting under this tree. And like right in the front, there was two other young actors who I didn't know, but they had flown in from LA. They got parts in the movie. And so the director says, "Okay, let's rehearse scene, 36. And as everybody got their pages and everybody nods. And so he says to the young couple who's sitting like very close, I mean, you see how close you and I look on the screen.
Yeah.
That's how it felt to me. They were 2 feet away. 2 feet away.
Okay.
And they're sitting on the ground. And this director is 6'6",
A tall guy.
So, right, big tall guy, long hair, and he says to this young couple, in the front, look, the scene starts off with you two, so I want you guys to do your dialogue, and there was a little bit of setup dialogue and whatnot, but then there was, he was supposed to say a certain line to her, and the director said, look, I don't want you to act. I just want you to say the words. I just want to hear the rhythm of the words, so don't act. And he said, you got it? And this kid goes, yeah. He goes, action. And this young fellow couldn't do it. He was acting up a storm, like everything was big. And the director goes, no. Cut. He goes, don't act. I just want you to say it to her. I want to hear the rhythm of the words between you. You got it? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, action. And he couldn't do it. So he says, cut. And everybody's kind of sitting there a little bit uncomfortable. And I feel this 6'6" guy standing next to me with his arms crossed, and he's staring down at me, and I feel it. And so I go, I look up, and he says, do you remember his dialogue? And I said, I think so. He says, can you say it to her? And I said, you want me to say his dialogue to her? And the young man on the ground goes like this. He thinks, oh my God, I've screwed up so bad. And I go, yeah, I think I can do it. He goes, and the director looks right at me and goes, action. And I thought, okay. And I look up, and Willie Nelson's looking at me and winking and thumbs up, and because he knows the owner of that property that they're filming on, and he knows that I'm not that guy's son. And he has leaned over and told Diane Cannon this news. So the both of them have got their arms crossed, and they are smiling huge, like looking at me like, let's see what you got, kid.
Yeah.
They both know. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I think to myself, I can't just say the words, I don't know anything about acting, but I think what I'm supposed to do is make her believe me. Yeah. So she's on the ground, right? So I didn't say anything for 10 seconds fully. Everybody's staring at me. The director's staring at me, and she is too. And they're all thinking, oh no, he's frozen.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what it was. I was just trying to think of how to get into it so that she believed me. So you can't see it because of this camera, but I squatted down, because remember, she's sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
And I got down to where my face was right opposite hers. And I still haven't said anything. And I'm looking at her and looking her right in the eye. And I basically mentally kind of undressed her.
Mm-hmm.
And the line was something that a young cowboy would say to his girlfriend. And it was something, I think it was, darling, when I get my truck out of the shop this afternoon, I'm taking you dancing. Right? Something simple.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere in the back of my mind, I figured it out that it wasn't about the truck, and it wasn't about dancing. It was about, I want to get with you. And so I'm squatted down, looking straight in her face, and like very chill under my breath, but my eyes were sparkling. I said that line, like, darling, when I get my truck out of the shop this afternoon, I'm taking you dancing. It was like that. It was very understated. And she lights up. And the director looks at all these famous actors and goes, cut. And, and my face was red, because everybody was staring at me, and the girl was smiling. Like it just worked. And the director walks away in a minute. A couple minutes later, the assistant director came over and said, "Hey, the director wants to know if you'd like to be in this next scene." And I went, "Yeah." So they take me over to the table where they're signing up extras, right? Not even the actors, just an extra. And I had to sign it, and they were going to pay me $25, and he leads me through the crowd of people of 700 extras and it was a barn dance, and Willie Nelson's real band was on stage and was going to play. And Willie, he leads me right up to this girl. It was a different girl, different scene than what we had done under the tree. And he says, "Leslie, this is Todd. Todd, this is Leslie. The director, Jerry, wants you two to dance. You know, originally it was just going to be Leslie by herself, but he wants the two of you to dance together when the music starts, and stay kind of tight. Don't get out with the crowd." And there were 700 people that were going to start dancing. And he goes, "And by the way, there's 7 cameras on you." And so this is 1980, right? The cameras were gigantic.
Yeah.
And he turns away, and then he turns back. He says, "Oh, and in the movie, her boyfriend is the drummer in Willie's band, and he wants you to make him not like it."
Mm-hmm.
So I look up at the drummer, and the drummer waves his drumstick, goes, "Hey, buddy, how are you?" I said, "Hey, man, how are you?" So away goes the assistant director, and I'm talking to Leslie, and all of a sudden I hear, the drummer starts hitting his sticks, 1, 2, 3, and they start, and there's banks of speakers like 8 feet tall, and it's really loud, and I'm right in front of it. I'm 3 feet away from Willie Nelson, and he's smiling at me because he knows the deal. And the music was so loud, I kind of froze for a second. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And, I look up, and Leslie's kind of looking at me like, come on. So I think, oh shit, I got to dance. So I grab her, and I'm dancing. And then about 10 seconds in, I think to myself, oh my God, I'm supposed to make him not like it. So I keep looking at him, and he's not paying attention. He's drumming, got his head down. And I keep looking, and because I don't know anything about acting, I think that at some moment he's just going to look over at us and have kind of a nasty expression on his face. And he's not doing it. He's not doing it. And so I think to myself, oh my God, I'm ruining the movie. And I'm an extra in the middle of 700 other extras. But Diane Cannon's dancing around, and she came by and swatted me on the butt, and just everything, right? And I'm sitting there going, whoa, how did I get here?
Yeah.
30 minutes ago I was eating fried chicken. And so all of a sudden I think, wow, I cannot get this guy to pay attention. So this is 1980, before cell phones. And you couldn't do something like this today, given the way the world is today. But I took a deep breath and said a little prayer to the movie gods. And I thought, I got to do something. So I did. I stuck my hand down the back of her jeans and grabbed a handful of her naked rear end. And man, she straightened up like that, and her eyes went like that. And I kept my hand in there, and I was looking past her to the drummer, and he is now going, like this, like focused on us. And all of a sudden I hear the bullhorn go, cut, 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 cut. And, my hand is still in her pants, and I'm like, oh my God. And I pull my hand out. I go, Leslie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She goes, no, we're good. So
it worked.
So I look up, and I see 6'6" director cutting through the crowd with the assistant director, and he walks right straight to me. No smile. And I knew, oh man, I messed this up bad, because with 7 cameras in those days, it was probably a $500,000 shot. You know, it was expensive.
Yeah.
And I just said, as soon as he walked up, I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I ruined the shot, you know, just kick me out of here, you know. And he goes, no, no, no. He goes, who told you to do that? And I said, I'm so sorry. And he goes, no, no, I'm asking you a question. Who told you to do what you did? And I look over at that assistant director and I think to myself, you know, he makes his living in Hollywood. I'm a junior at the University of Texas. I can't throw him under the bus like that. So I said to the director, you know, man, nobody told me to do that. Yeah. David here said that I was supposed to dance with Leslie and make him not like it. And I couldn't get him to pay attention. So I did something and I made him. And that director crossed his arms, man, and he was looking at me. And he reached, before cell phones, right? So he reached in his back pocket and he pulls out this old wallet and he thumbs through it and he hands me his business card. And he goes, that's my private number in Los Angeles. And when you go home tonight and you think about what you did here and you decide that this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life and you move to Los Angeles, you call me and I will help you. And 7 days later, I finished my junior year, packed my car, moved to LA, called him. He took me to dinner, got me into an acting class, and here I am 40 years later, still making movies.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Just, speechless. I mean, what a story.
So I tell people, I tell that story, you know, and
Wow.
to, like, I've spoken to theater departments, I've spoken, you know, different universities and high schools, and
Yeah.
I tell that story, and I always ask them, why am I telling you this story? And, you know, it takes 2 or 3 people, you know, that have the wrong answer to that. And I go, no, no, no. And there's always some shy kid sitting 8 rows back. And the last time it was this young girl, and she was a senior in college. And she didn't think very much of herself. She was wearing a knit hat with no makeup on, and she didn't want to stand up. And I said, no, no, stand up. Sorry, my grandbaby's crying over there.
It's okay.
And I said, I got her to stand up. And I said, why did I tell you this story? And she said, you're telling us to trust our instincts. And I go, yes, I am. That's it. In life.
Yeah.
And in acting, especially acting, but in life, trust your gut, you know?
That's true.
So that's why I tell the story.
Terrific. Wow, I'm having trouble going forward now.
No, man.
Because
Promise
you just
I
like
won't
knock it out of the park with that answer. I mean,
tell any more long stories.
no, please. If you have more, go ahead. I mean, it's what I crave for. When you did Uncommon Valor with Gene Hackman in 1983, what was it like for you to step on a set knowing it was starring Gene Hackman, and what kind of lessons did you learn that you still apply to this day?
You know, that was my second job as an actor. And I got that role because the director of 48 Hours called the director of Uncommon Valor and said, you need to hire this guy. And they did.
Yeah.
And I played Gene Hackman's son.
Yeah.
And you know, that was a remarkable day for me to step on that set. We shot in Hawaii. And I thought, wow, man, this is going pretty fast. It's going pretty fast. And because my film debut was opposite Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. in 48 hours.
And
so
now you're
I'm
playing Hackman's son.
now I'm playing Hackman's son. And, Gene was, he's an imposing guy. He's a big guy. He's like 6'3" or 6'4".
Yeah.
And he's, in those days, he was probably in his early 50s. So his career was still, kind of up there. Now he's 90.
Yep.
And, it was kind of amazing, being in the makeup trailer with him, and Patrick Swayze was on that movie,
That's right.
and all those guys. And I just remember, they paid a farmer to pull out his taro crop, which is a staple food in Hawaii. It's like, and it's in a big, like a flooded field, like, it's like almost like a turnip or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's a big long stalk that sits in water all the time.
Oh, okay.
And it's a staple in Hawaii. And they paid this guy to tear it all out, and they planted rice and made it a rice paddy to look like Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
But taro has deep mud, because there's a lot of, loose dirt at the bottom, and it's underwater. And so they had the stunt coordinator and some effects guys out in that rice paddy. And they came back and said, I don't think we can shoot here. I don't think, Todd's got to carry this guy out of the, if you've seen the poster for that movie.
Yeah, I've seen the movie.
And on the poster, it's Tex Cobb's face carrying that guy, but that's a photograph of me carrying that guy. And they superimposed his face because he had a bigger part in the movie than I did.
Yeah.
And they came over and they were in a discussion, like, nobody can run through that mud with somebody on their shoulders. And the guy that I was supposed to carry was like 6'3", and I'm 5'10", 5'11",
yeah,
175 pounds. And they were all going, there's no way, we got to do it, with the stunt guys. And I thought, no, man, this is my second time on film. I'm not giving up. And I went over to the director and I said, let me try it. So let me try it. And he said, okay. And I said, but I think we ought to shoot it, because I don't know how many times I can do it. I walked out in it and, felt like what it was like. And I'm thinking, wow. So, I throw this guy up on my shoulder, and he's wet because he's been shot down. He's down in the water, right? So I get him up on my shoulders, and they have, special effects has planted explosions that look like incoming mortars out in the field, and they are setting those things off, and I'm running like, and I threw my back out, and I can see it when I watch the movie. I see the moment where my back went out because I go, like I go like that, and it's in the movie. But I did it, and the stunt coordinator came over, and the director came over, and just put their hand on me and said, man, we didn't think you could do that. And I go, well, we did.
You did.
But it was, working with Gene was very cool. He was pretty imposing. He kind of keeps to himself. There was one or two times where me and Patrick Swayze and some of the other guys who were funny were all in the trailer, and we're putting on our camo makeup, and doing our stuff. And Gene would come in, and he would listen to all of us and kind of go, and then every now and then he would pitch in and say something, and it was really funny, and we'd all start laughing, and then we'd all go out and go to work. But he was pretty focused. He's a very focused guy. He doesn't screw around. In between shots, he's not hanging out joking with the rest of us. He's like, go back to his trailer. He's just there to do a job.
Yeah, very razor sharp.
Like, I worked with him again on 𝙂𝙧 with Kevin.
Yeah.
And he was the same way. Very focused.
focused and concentrated.
Yep.
1984 was kind of an eventful year for you, so let's say, because you met and worked with two people that you would work with multiple times in the subsequent years. Those two people are writer-director Lawrence Kasdan and actor-director Kevin Costner. How did 𝙬𝙬 find its way to you?
Man, it's a good story.
I'm here for those.
Yeah. Let me just check my battery. I'm good here. But so I was, a young guy. I'd only done 3 or 4 small roles in movies, 48 Hours, Uncommon Valor, and then something else, and a couple of small TV roles. And I was just getting going, but I was working consistently.
Yeah.
And there was Lawrence Kasdan's first movie that he ever directed was a movie called Body Heat. Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
You remember that movie?
Yeah.
Kathleen Turner, William Hurt. And I had seen that movie in the theater. And I thought, man, I'd like to work with that guy. And I read in those days, you bought the Hollywood Reporter and Daily Variety, and you'd read the trades. And I saw something that Lawrence Kasdan was going to speak at the Academy of Motion Pictures in the main theater about writing and directing. And I went and got my ticket, and I'm sitting in that audience that day. And at the end, and he talked about making, The Big Chill, and he talked about making Body Heat, and he took questions at the end of it, and somebody raised their hand and said, "What are you working on next?" And he said, "I'm working on this Western that I'm writing called 𝙬𝙬." And he goes, "It's really good, and I want to make that movie." And being from Texas, right, I'm thinking, wow, I'm a Western guy. So after the event was over, he was out in the lobby, and I waited my turn and then kind of elbowed my way to the front, and I introduced myself to him, told him who I was, and I was a young actor, and I was from Texas, and I was really good on a horse, and if there was ever a shot for something for me to do in 𝙬𝙬, I would love to do it. And he thanked me, and we shook hands, and I walk away. And so, many months goes by after that event, and I was working, doing other parts, and I got cast in a movie that a director named Joel Schumacher was going to make. And Joel was famous, and it was a kind of a Brat Pack movie with Rob Lowe and Demi Moore, and it was called St. Elmo's Fire. And I got cast to play her husband.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big deal. My agency it was a big deal. And so they were all excited, like, wow, this is really a launching point for you, And by the way, my agent was because of the director of 48 Hours. He asked me, Walter Hill, he asked me, he goes, "Kid, have you got an agent?" And I go, "No." He goes, "You want one?" I go, "Yeah." He writes it down on a piece of paper and said, "Call her." And it was his girlfriend. And she was a partner at ICM, which at the time was the biggest talent agency in the world. And she became my first agent. So, I'm just telling you, it just rolled very quickly for me.
It's a snowball effect.
And I was in acting classes all the time because I didn't know how to act. I just kept getting cast in movies. And anyway, so I get cast in St. Elmo's Fire, and it's been 8 or 9 months since I saw Lawrence Kasdan speak at that event. And I get a call from my agent, and she goes, "Can you make it to Warner Brothers at 3:00 this afternoon? This is like at noon." And I go, "For what?" And she goes, "Well, you're a request of the director of a movie called 𝙬𝙬, and they want to meet you at 3:00 at Warner Brothers." And I go, "Yeah, I can be there." So I make my way to Warner Brothers, before 3 o'clock, and I get there, and the head of casting for Warner Brothers, who I didn't know, comes out to greet me, and I'm thinking, wow, when you're a young actor like that, you typically don't make it all the way to the head of casting at a major movie studio. There's always somebody below them. She came out and she goes, yeah, listen, Larry Kasdan wants to meet with you, and let's just go back. And I went, okay. So we go back, we sit in his office, and he jumps up and gives me a hug and shakes hands and said, this is my brother, and he co-wrote the script with me, and this is so and so, and he's a producer on the movie with us, and the casting director, the head of casting, is there. And he goes, sit down, sit down, sit down. He goes, so tell me about growing up in Texas, tell me about you. And so I did. And at the end of this meeting, and it was a 45 minutes or an hour, he goes, well, look, we really want you to be in 𝙬𝙬𝙀𝙯, and there's a role I want you to play. And I go, well, and I'm looking around, and I look at the head of casting, and I look back at Kasdan, and I go, well, do you want me to audition? And he goes, no, I got a role for you. And I left that meeting and called my agents, and I said, I can't believe it. I cannot believe this. Because they didn't know the story that I had gone to hear him speak 9 months earlier. Nobody knew. And so a few days goes by, when we get the contract, the offer comes in from Warner Brothers for 𝙬𝙬𝙀𝙯. And my agent says, man, we have got a huge problem here. And I go, what? And he goes, the shooting schedules conflict. You can't do 𝙬𝙬𝙀𝙯. You've already signed for St. Elmo's Fire. And I just went, oh, I just couldn't believe it. And I spent a couple of days, in a state of quasi depression. I'm not a very depressive guy. I'm more
up.
The glass is half full all the time.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I've always been my whole life. And so I thought about it. I went to church. I prayed about it. I didn't know what to do, but I felt like in my heart that my destiny was 𝙬𝙬𝙀𝙯. And so I called my agent, who was a partner at ICM, and I said, can I have Joel Schumacher's phone number? And she said, Todd, under no circumstances can you call Joel Schumacher and try to get out of this contract. And I go, and she goes, that is acting 101, rule number 1 in Hollywood. You don't do it. No, you cannot have his phone number. So I hung up the phone. Hour goes by, and I called a different agent at ICM, and I go, hey man, I'm trying to get a hold of Joel Schumacher. I need his phone number. Can you give it to me? And he goes, I got the memo, man. No, you cannot call Joel Schumacher and try to get out of this thing. So I'm sitting there in a quandary, right? So yeah. I call the head of the talent department at ICM, who didn't know any of this. And I go, hey man, it's Todd. Listen, I met you a couple of weeks ago, but listen, I've got a question for my director. I got cast in St. Elmo's Fire, and I got to ask him a question about something. Any way you can give me his phone number? And he goes, yeah, I got it right here.
So you worked your way around the thing.
So I script out what I'm going to say, what I want to say, because it's a big deal. And I was 24 years old, really, really young, and 25, I guess. And I called him, and he answered the phone. And I go, Joel, it's Todd Allen. He goes, Todd, how you doing, buddy? And I said, I'm good, man. I'm good. He goes, what can I do for you? I said, well, I got a question for you. I said, first off, I want to thank you for seeing enough in me to cast me in St. Elmo's Fire. I'm super grateful. I'm excited. But I got a little dilemma, and I need to talk to you about it. He goes, go ahead. So I tell him the story about meeting Kasdan 9 months earlier, and then all of a sudden I got the offer to do 𝙬𝙬, and the schedules conflict, and all of a sudden the phone gets really quiet, and he goes, "Are you asking me to let you out of your contract?" And I took a deep breath and I said, "Yes, sir, I am, but I will abide by whatever your decision is. If you say no, I'm doing St. Elmo's Fire, and I'm happy to do it. But I believe in my heart that 𝙬𝙬 is my destiny. I don't know why, but I just feel that way. And I feel like there's plenty of good actors that you can get to play Demi Moore's husband in St. Elmo's Fire." And there was 5-10 seconds of silence, and he goes, "Well, let me just say this, young man, you got big balls for making this phone call." And he goes, "Let me guess, did your agents tell you not to call me?" And I go, every single one of them. And he laughed. And he goes, "Yeah, oh yeah, I figured that happened." He goes, "But you know what? You made the phone call anyway. And I like that. I like that quality. And I'm also a big believer in fate and destiny. And if you feel in your heart that strongly that 𝙬𝙬 is your destiny, then I'm not going to get in the way of that. So I'm going to let you out of this contract." And he did. And the rest is history. Now I've done 3 or 4 movies with Lawrence Kasdan. And when I finish the 4 movies that make up Horizon, that will have been 8 with Kevin.
Yeah.
So my decision was the right one.
Again, listening to your guts.
Yeah.
Is
my agents were all pissed off at me.
Yeah, I bet.
They were all
yeah, because it would have been, in their eyes, it would have been a big launching pad for you, that movie. But it worked out perfectly, as it has.
𝙬𝙬 was a bigger launch.
Yeah.
Because I was in 𝙬𝙬, before the movie had even come out, everybody knew that it was going to be big and that Costner was going to be big. And I got my first starring role in a movie because I was in 𝙬𝙬. So,
yeah. So that led to even a bigger stuff. So
and the movie, and 𝙬𝙬 wasn't even out yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you made the right call. Again, following your guts.
Yeah.
So you've been directed by Kasdan, if I'm not mistaken, 3 times: Silverado, Grand Canyon, and White Earp. And he's a very literate, script-driven director, very much like Kevin. What did you learn from working with him?
I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him. He's a man of few words, and if you do something as an actor that he really loves, he just says, "Great, let's move on. Let's move on." He's not one to jump up and run over and grab you and go, "God, great, 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 great." And it took me a little bit of getting used to that. And if you do something in a shot or a scene that he doesn't like, it's the same. He doesn't run over and go, "What are you doing?" He sits there and goes, "Let's do another one. Let's do another one."
Yeah.
I think this moment's more funny than that. Not so dramatic. That's about all he'll say. He's not, and he's not an actor. He's not an actor like Kevin is. Kevin gets right in your face and talks to you moment to moment to moment to moment to moment.
Yeah, I've noticed he's very much like a coach.
Yeah. He's giving you the internal motivations that you should feel. And Kasdan doesn't do that. And I asked him about it one time at dinner in doing 𝙬𝙬. And he goes, "I feel like 90% of my job is done when I cast an actor.
Oh, okay.
If I cast it correctly, I only have to give him this much direction on the set. It's really interesting.
Don't have to talk too much to him, to the actors, because they already have the job, so
yeah,
they're right for the job. So
right, they'll get it. They know what to do. I just have to guide them a little bit this way or a little bit this way, and so his direction is very minimal.
Yeah,
but he knows exactly what he wants on the camera. So he sets the shot and he knows everything he wants, and if just he's listening to it. He's got headphones on, right? If he needs to hear something a little bit different, he'll just say, "Let's go again. Let's do that again." And then the actor goes, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. He's always come across to me when watching him in behind the scenes stuff as a very soft spoken kind of guy, but very precise and meticulous.
He is, yeah. He came out of, I don't know if you knew this, but he came out of advertising. He was a copywriter.
He was a copywriter. That's when he wrote Bodyguard. He was still a copywriter when he did that in 1975.
And he wrote that for Steve McQueen.
Me and Diana Ross. Yeah, crazy, right? Yeah. When you and Kevin first worked together on Silverado, he was an up-and-coming actor still. Well, he had a bright future ahead of him, but he was still not as a huge movie star.
No.
Do you recall what your very first meeting with him was like, and what struck you the most about him as a person, and how did the friendship between you two get started?
Yes, I do. So I flew into Santa Fe, and the head of the talent department at ICM flew with me. And I didn't, it's all right. We're all right. He's all right. Grandbaby number four. Number four here, yes.
Wow. I have two nieces, so.
There you go. Where was I? So I fly into Santa Fe, right? And
Yep.
I'm young. I'm 25 years old, and I get there, and I don't know why the head of the talent department flew with me, because I don't know this person. I found out later it's because ICM was trying to sign Kevin as a client. And so we get there, and it's cold. It's November. It's like 12 degrees and snowing, and I didn't have any of the right clothing. So, and it was late in the afternoon when we got there, and there was one store open that was an expensive Santa Fe sheepskin clothing store called Overland Sheepskin, which is still around. And I went in there because it was the only place open. And, I'd been living in Southern California. It just doesn't get cold, right? And I didn't have my gear with me. So I went into Overland Sheepskin, and I picked out this sheepskin coat, and it was like $600. Today it'd be $3,000. And I had like $650 in my pocket. And I went, and I bought that jacket. So the head of the talent department had said, I'm going to meet you at this restaurant. We're invited to this dinner party tonight that Lawrence Kasdan is throwing. All the cast is going to be there, and the producers. And I went, great. So I put my sheepskin coat on. My hair's about this long. And we go to this party, and a lot of them are already there. And so Lawrence Kasdan stands up, gives me a big hug, and he goes, "Hey, everybody, this is Todd. He's going to play John Cleese's deputy for us." And everybody's like, "Hey, man," So I kind of worked my way down the table to a seat, right? And I sit there, and I'm looking around that room, and it's Jeff Goldblum and Brian Dennehy and Costner and Kevin Kline and
Scott
you know
Glenn.
Dan Glover, all these people, right? Scott Glenn, and they're all there, and I'm looking around going, oh my God, because this is my fifth job ever
Yeah,
as an actor.
you were moving fast.
And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to everybody. And so Kevin kind of works his way around the table saying hello to everybody. And he comes down to where I am and he sits down across from me. And he goes, and he leans in, he goes, hey man, after this thing breaks up, you want to go get a drink? And I go, yeah, let's do. So we do. And it's, he and I are we're kind of the same guy. He's older than me, but he could tell that we're just the same guy. We kind of, happy and, go lucky and,
Salt of the earth.
yeah. And, there's been a few times where I thought we were going to play brothers in film. And
cool.
Never happened, but there's been more than once. So we go to this swanky place in Santa Fe and it's snowing hard. It's a blizzard. It's 12 degrees. And we're sitting at the bar and this girl starts chatting him up, and pretty quickly. And like to your point, the public didn't yet really know that he was a big movie star.
Yeah.
But Hollywood, inside Hollywood, they all the producers, all the studios, they were thinking this guy's the next big deal. But the public didn't know it yet. So we're sitting there and this girl's chatting him up and I bought her a drink and I'm drinking straight bourbon and sitting there and I'm shooting a Western. Thought I was John Wayne. And so this girl, and there's two pool tables in the back of this bar and there's people playing pool. And I go, hey man, you want to shoot a game of pool? And he goes, yeah. I said, let me go put money on the table. So I go back to the back and I put money on the table. Like, we got the next game. And I come back to the bar and this girl says to Kevin, hey, it's really slippery out in the parking lot and it's snowing. And I'm a nurse. I got to get up at like 5:30 in the morning. So I need to go home. Would you walk me out to my car? And he does the gentlemanly thing. He goes, sure. So he puts on his coat. He and the girl leave and go out the back door. And if you go out the back door to the parking lot, you're on kind of a landing. And there's like 6 steps, down to the parking lot level where the cars are. And there's a light bulb, there was like a bare light bulb over your head when you were standing up on that landing. So I think, okay, he'll be back in a minute. And I check, the pool tables again. Well, I see these two guys have stopped playing pool and they're putting on their coats and they unscrew their pool cues and slide the stick up their sleeve. And I go, oh man, and I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm all of 175 pounds, right? I'm not, and I think to myself, God, I just got in this town 4 hours ago. It's my 5th movie. I'm about to get my ass beat. And so they go out the back door. And so I shoot down the shot of rest of my bourbon, put on my sheepskin coat, which makes me look big. And I walk out and I'm standing on that landing, right? And that light bulb is over my head. And so if in your mind, if you think, maybe 50, 60 feet out is Kevin at the car and he's trying to put the girl in the car and she keeps trying to kiss him. About halfway to them are the 2 guys. So Kevin looks up and he sees the 2 guys and then he looks up and he sees me on the landing and he goes, man, is there a problem? And the 2 guys don't know that I've come out behind them. And I kind of muscled up the deepest voice I could muscle up, and I went, no, man, there's no fucking problem here. And I'm looking right at these two guys, and I look big, and my hair's long, and the sheepskin's got this big collar on it, right? I mean, I look big. Yeah. And they took off.
Wow.
So I go, I'm thinking, wow, these guys were, A, they're big, and B, they've got pool cues up their sleeves. They would beat our ass. So I go back in the bar, and like 2 minutes later, Kevin comes running back in. He's a little bit out of breath, and his eyes are like this, and he goes, man, those guys were going to kick my ass. And I go, they were. And he goes, you just saved my ass. And I go, I did. And we've been like this for 39 years since that moment.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Again, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to add to that. So I'll just that's a story. It's another great story.
I'll tell you, I'll add to that. This very small piece is like 2 days later was my first day of filming. And it was a big movie. Silverado was a big movie. And I go through the lunch tent, right, to get lunch, and I'm carrying a tray, and I walk out, and it's cold. It's not snowing, but it's really cold. And my boots are wet, my feet are freezing, and there's two giant tents, and they're for the cast and crew and the extras. And I don't know which is which, because the only people I've met so far are the stars of the movie, and I don't see any of them in the tent. They're all eating lunch in their trailer where it's comfortable, and they've got TVs and heaters, and so I don't know who's an extra and who's an actor, and I don't know which tent to go sit in. And I'm sitting there, literally standing there in costume, and Kevin walks up behind me, and says, and he goes, "What are you doing, fucker?" And I go, "Man, I'm trying to figure out where to go eat. I don't know which tent to sit in." And he looks at me, and he goes, and he turns me, and he points, and he says, "Do you see that big ass trailer right there?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "That's my trailer. Now it's your trailer too. Let's go eat some lunch." And I ate lunch with him in that trailer almost every day, or a lot of days. And I reminded him of that when we started Horizon. We were sitting around a campfire waiting to set up a shot one night, and he came over and sat down, and Will Patton was there, and several Luke Wilson. There's 4 or 5 actors there. And so somebody said, "You guys go back a long way." But me and Kevin, he goes, "Man, when did you guys meet?" And so I told this part of the story that I'm telling you now. And Kevin, he's sitting on like a hay bale, right? And he on Horizon, we're next to a wagon, and there's a campfire, and we've got guns, and we've got, we're going to shoot this scene. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Man, I forgot that. I forgot." He goes, "It sounds like something I would do, though." Mm-hmm. And later on that night, he walked over to me when we weren't sitting in a group, and he put his arm around me, and he goes, "Hey, man, I did that for you. I wouldn't have done that for just anybody. But when I looked at you, I saw me, and I saw a guy that could be playing my part in this movie, in Silverado."
Yeah.
He goes, "That's why I did it. I wouldn't have done it for just anybody." And it was really a great moment for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's who that guy is.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. That's
I've done 70 plus movies since then, I think, and I've tried to do something like that and pay that forward. So there's always some young actor on the set that doesn't know where to sit or where to go, and I've done that. I've paid that forword. Come on, man.
Great.
That trailer right there.
That's my trailer. You and
me. Let's go eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you already answered that, but I'm gonna ask this question anyway. What are some of some of the most significant memories that you have of talking, working, or just hanging out with Kevin that, or and being friends with him that have stayed with you and that will always resonate with you?
Well, those two stories I just told you are two,
Yeah.
high up the food chain. He's also been very instrumental in my personal life. I had some family dramas going on with my brother that he had very similar situation go on. And he told me, come on up to Santa Barbara, man, let's sit down. So I stayed 2 or 3 days up there, and he walked me through what he had done to fix a bad situation. And so I've learned a lot from him, I mean, going back onto Silverado, he would, well, I'll tell you something interesting about Kevin. And I didn't really notice it so much on Silverado, but I did on Wyatt Earp because I was part of his, sort of posse on that movie. And the character that I played was like really close friends with Wyatt Earp in real life. But I noticed something about Kevin. We're standing out in the middle of the street in Dodge City, and Wyatt has put out signs like "turn in your guns when you get to town," and this group of rowdy guys didn't do it, and they shot up the sign.
Yeah.
And so me and Kevin and Doc Holliday and Tom Sizemore and all these guys are out in the middle of the street waiting to get the shot set up, and we're all gonna get our guns ready and walk down that street and confront these guys and take their guns. And we're talking, we're kind of running the dialogue and we're doing the things. And I noticed that Kevin would walk over to another actor and he'd go, "Hey man, I'm thinking about something. It could be cool for you. When you say your line about X, Y, and Z and you say that, it'd be really cool if you did something, did X, did Y, did, throw it this way and not this way." And I quickly learned that not only did he know his own lines, he knew every other actor's lines in the scene. And he was very much acting like a director in that way. So he's always had that instinct, but even as an actor, he knew everybody's lines. So when I go back to Silverado and I'm nervous a little bit, and I'm working opposite all these people, and John Cleese was a legendary guy, and all of it.
Yeah.
Kevin Kline, and Kevin would routinely walk over to me and go, "Hey man, listen, I thought about this. When you have that line, or be like, before you start shooting at me when I break out of the jail," he goes, "It could be cool, man. Take your gun and break the glass out of the window, and then come out and then start shooting, And he goes, "Go ask the director, but don't tell him I told you." So I would do it, and I'd say, "Hey, it might be a cool thing if I did this." I mean, in Kevin's case, if you remember there was that moment in the movie where his brothers he's in jail and they go to see him for the first time, and he jumps up and he grabs the thing, right?
Like
None
a
of
monkey.
Yeah. None of that was in the script.
Wow.
He just, like, it was monkey bars, and he's working his way around that scene, and he drops and he goes, "All I did was kiss the girl."
Yeah.
If you remember that, right?
Yeah, I do.
And he just instinctively did it. It wasn't written. And so he was giving me stuff like that, like, break the window out first before you do the thing, and really, really really aim at what you're shooting at, really look at what you're shooting at before you pull the trigger. Don't just, a lot of actors just go,
yeah,
the gun. You go, no, really, really be specific. Really look where you're shooting. And it was so helpful because now I've done a ton of Westerns, and I learned that lesson from him back 39 years ago.
Oh,
So, there's just, man, there's tons of moments like that that I remember about Kevin, and yeah, he's just a remarkable guy. There was probably one of the more meaningful things to me, and it didn't happen on a set. It was just that we got to be friends after Silverado, and there was a couple of times where I wasn't going to fly back to Texas for Thanksgiving, and he went, "Man, you're coming with me. We're going to my parents' house for Thanksgiving," because he knew I didn't have a lot of money and I couldn't, you know, I didn't know if I can't remember if I didn't go home because I didn't have the money, or I had auditions coming or whatever it was. I don't know what it was now, but he said, "Forget about it, man. You're coming with me." And I had Thanksgiving dinner with he and his parents and family every year for about 6 or 7 years. And Kevin and I would get in there and do the dishes and then take the kids out and throw the football and have a football game. And man, I can't replace those memories.
yeah.
I was extremely close to his parents, extremely. And for the next 30 plus years, no matter where I was in the world, on Thanksgiving Day, I picked up my phone and called his parents
Wow.
until they died.
That's so lovely. That's such a lovely story.
Yeah.
And
But that guy
that's
is,
very
man.
touching that you did that, and that he did that for you. Very, very
Yeah.
touching. Very touching. Wow. You.
I get pissed off that I'm giving you all these personal stories.
No,
But
I'm not pissed off. I'm just so taken aback by the, the grandiosity of these little stories. But they're not little; they're big because they got
big.
a lot of heart.
They're big. They change people's lives, changed my life.
Well, it changed mine too. I will tell you my story when this is over, when the interview is over. Maybe I'll write it to you.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, what did it feel like to you to be making another Westerns 10 years later, after Silverado, with the same people you had done Silverado with 10 years prior, and portraying like real life people that had shaped the West and history. Like we're
Yeah.
talking about White Earp in this case, the White Earp
Uh,
story.
I've always liked um, stories about real life people. Going back even.
Well, you played Chuck Yeager, so
Well, yeah, and there's a whole story to that. They called me in to play the lead in that movie, which was a white scarf out the canopy of a biplane, barnstorming kind of crazy pilot. And my father was a fighter pilot in the Navy, and flew off an aircraft carrier. Now Yeager was Air Force, but I had just read Chuck Yeager's book, and so I went in, and it was a big deal. It was a big CBS network audition. All the executives, are 20 people in that room. And I went in and read for the lead guy, the white scarf out the window, out the windshield. And I did okay. I did, I kind of had that sort of thing. And the director goes, "Man, great job. Great job. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch." And I went, "Okay." And I didn't leave. And the casting director, who was the head of casting at CBS, was looking at me, and she's thinking to herself, "Oh my God, what's he about to do?" The director said, "Is there something else?" I said, "Yeah, it's a little unusual, I know, but could I read for the role of Chuck Yeager too?" And the casting director goes like this, because again, it's rule number one: you don't do that as an actor, especially a young actor. And I said, "I just read his book. My dad was a fighter pilot, and it means a lot to me. And if I don't get the other role, I'd like to have a shot at playing Chuck." And the director sat back and he goes, well, did you prepare it? I go, I did. He goes, well, you got the scenes? And I said, I do. So I flipped through my script and he says to the casting director, well, go to Yeager's scene. And there was like 5 scenes. He goes, let's just do the first one. Let's just do scene number 1. I said, okay. So, you know, the other character that I had just done was completely different. Chuck Yeager was serious, funny, but serious, West Virginia accent, completely different guy. And I don't know what happened. I just flipped a switch and all of a sudden this West Virginia accent came out of me and I start doing it and we get all the way through it. And the director looks around the room at all the producers and he goes, did you happen to prepare another one? And I go, I did. He goes, well, let's do scene 2. And we ended up doing all 5 of them. And at the end of it, everybody's looking at me like, where did this guy come from? And the director says, we'll see you on the set, Chuck.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But
again,
so again,
going
you know,
for it, you know, again, like you always have done, going for it.
Yeah, very
following
true.
your guts.
But also, you know, flash forward to Wyatt Earp, you know, and the personal side of that is very important to me. Before Wyatt Earp was made, I was, you know, by that time in my early 30s, and you know, my career was taking off. I was starring in movies and television shows, and you know, blah blah blah, and all of us out of left field, man. I had a masseuse that would come to my house every Friday and give me a massage, and she found this knot in my neck, and she said, you know, that feels a little funny, but you should go get that looked at. And then once she pointed it out, I would go like this every day, you know, and I could feel it.
Yeah.
And anyway, the short version is I was told that I had thyroid cancer and it had spread into a lymph node in my neck. And that's what that knot was. And I was going to have a total thyroidectomy and get radiation and all this shit. I'm sitting there going, oh, wow. Wow. So I had to call my agents and say, look, call off the auditions here for a little bit until I can get through this. So I go into the hospital on my birthday, to have that surgery. And it was a long surgery, like a 6-7 hour surgery. It was a big deal. They had to look for other cancer in my neck and all down in my chest cavity. And it was a big deal, right? And so they roll me out of surgery and they're rolling me down the hallway back to my room. I'd been in the recovery room for an hour or 2. And you just never feel worse than you do when you wake up from surgery. It's just awful. And they're rolling me down the hallway, and all of a sudden this face comes into my point of view, just right here, right there, this close. And I hear this voice say, you look like shit, fucker. It was Kevin. He was the first person I saw when I came out of that surgery was Kevin. And by that time, The Untouchables had come out, and you know, all these other movies, and
the Dreams Dances, and
he was a huge star.
Yeah.
Huge star. And all the nurses on the 7th floor in that hospital in Los Angeles had gone crazy. And they were taking the elevators down to the 7th floor so they could see Kevin Costner. But you know, that's who he is, man.
Yeah.
But and so the reason I said that piece was he came back to visit me in the hospital before I went home, and he took a hold of my hand, you know, and he's talking to me and he goes, hey man, we're gonna go make this movie called Wyatt Earp, you know, so get your ass better. we're going to go make this movie. And
make it together, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you talking to me? That's okay. So anyway, yeah, man. But so then I go to 𝙂𝙧𝙖𝙀𝙯 and I'm playing 𝙬𝙗𝙀 𝙂𝙗𝙗𝙗, and who in real life was Wyatt's really close friend. And interestingly,
so that mirrored your own real life relationship with Kevin.
yeah,
in a way.
yeah. And that was my first movie, my first acting job back after having that surgery. Was her.
Wow. And you were uniting with Kasdan and Kevin, you know, the whole thing.
And they put me in a role that, you know, kept me on the payroll for 5.5 months and put me back on my feet.
Yeah.
After all of that. And you know, it was really interesting. And then, you know, the funny caveat to that is on Horizon, in movie number 1, which we shot last September and October and November, I was working with Michael Rooker, the actor, Michael Rooker, and he and I just bonded, got to be great friends. And we were giving each other shit because he was in Tombstone.
Yeah.
And I'm in 𝙂𝙧𝙖𝙀, and I had forgotten that Michael Rooker played 𝙬𝙀 𝙂𝙗𝙗 in Tombstone.
You're right.
Yes. So we're sitting at a bar in a restaurant one night, and I go, Rooker, you do realize that we have something else in common? He goes, what's that? And I go, we both played 𝙬𝙀 𝙂𝙗𝙗𝙗 in dueling westerns. And he went, what? You know, it was very funny.
Mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Gee, I forgot my train of thought here. Yeah, you were directed by Kevin also before Horizon in 1997's Postman. I think it's a movie that is sadly not as talked about as I feel it should be. I don't know. I love it personally. Yeah. I don't care about the critics and all that stuff. I am my own critic, so I make up my mind about things. What are your memories of being directed by Kevin back then, and of the making of the movie in general? You played.
Yeah, all fond. They're all good memories. We had a lot of fun on that set. A group of the actors, including Will Patton. I'm still really close with a whole bunch of those guys. And I ran it, and you know, I hadn't worked with Will again until Horizon, but we just, you know, rebonded immediately.
You reunited on Horizon.
But yeah, you know, I remember the Postman to me, even though it was a post-apocalyptic movie, it felt like a Western for me. Yeah. Because I was on horseback, and you know, and we were riding around like a posse. Yeah. And you know, it felt like a Western to me. And I think Kevin, that's how he saw it.
He saw it as a Western, I'm sure.
Yeah. Good guys against the bad guys.
Absolutely.
But you know, we had a lot of fun on that. And you know, it was a difficult shoot because we were in extreme locations. We started in Arizona in a copper mine, and then we went to Upper Washington State and worked up there, and that was so remote. We were 7 miles from the Canadian border, way up there, and then we finished it in Portland, Oregon. But it was very remote. You know, it was hard to get to the locations. It's a lot like Horizon. Horizon's, you know, well, you saw St. George is easier to get to than Moab. Mm-hmm. So when I go back on Tuesday morning, I'm going back to Moab, and it's hard. And plus, was it windy when you were there?
No, not particularly. Just the wind would kick up at noon or something like that, and kick up the sand and the dirt, but it would just last like 20 minutes and then would die down. So it was not particularly
well, for the entire 2-3 weeks before you got there, the wind was 40 miles an hour all day, all night. Wow. And we shot nights too, and the wind was blowing then too, so the dirt was all the actors' eyes are red. We were all losing our. My voice is still scratchy from it.
From the dirt and the wind.
Yes.
When I would get back to my place, when we would get back to our place in the evening, I would like blow my nose and like there was all this red dirt coming out. Sorry
Yeah.
for the image that I just conjured up, but that's how it was.
Yeah, man. It's a
Yeah,
hard. It's a hard one. Horizon's a difficult one. But
and
the
it's
Postman. So I go back to that was,
yeah.
you know, we had so much fun making that movie, and we would, cut up and laugh, and we'd throw parties, and then there was I think the house that Kevin was staying in up in Upper Washington was owned by a family, and they owned a golf course, like a private golf course on their ranch property.
And he had just done Tin Cup.
Yeah. So we organized a Sunday afternoon golf tournament, and had hired some girls to drive golf carts and serve beer.
Wow.
And it was just really funny shit, and I played with Kevin, and like just the level of abuse that was flying was like, I'd hit the ball, and everybody's drinking beer, and somebody'd say, "Oh, dude, take off the skirt, will you?" Just stop. It was
wow.
very
funny. I was so you reunited with Will Patton on Horizon after playing one of his henchmen on Postman, being directed by Kevin. So how was it stepping back in front of the camera, being directed by your friend again, and being surrounded by people you had like befriended like 20 years earlier?
It's just fun. It's been nothing but fun. But I'll tell you, it's been a hard shoot. Kevin had some personal things going on in his own life that made it even more difficult for him, and it was such a remote location that it's hard to stay in contact with your family, and it was just hard. It was hard, but it was being around that group of guys was great fun. And Kevin's a different guy than he was when he directed The Postman and Dances with Wolves. Even before that, he now knows, I find him to be kind of a remarkable film director because he's an actor. And if he doesn't like something, man, he takes those headphones off and he walks over to you and he says, "Look, man, you have the river right next to you. Look at it, see it before you turn back and say that line. You're not on stage. You don't have to imagine there's a river. There is a river. So look at it and see it, and then say that line." And what he did was clue me back into how to work really effectively moment to moment as an actor. Like, when you do television, and in the last few years, I've done probably more television than anything. It's all about how fast can you get the dialogue out, because there's a commercial coming.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like, just say it. And Kevin's like, no. Take your time, man.
Let it play.
Look, and then say it. And then if you're not sure what you saw, look back again. And then come back and say it. And it reminded me what's been great about Horizon is, he reminded me of how to work as an actor on film, not television. And when I started my career, I emulated guys like Gregory Peck and John Wayne and Mitchum and people like that, because so I would take those kinds of pauses, because I always felt like You know, I never wanted to play the young kid. I always wanted to play the man. And I always felt like, well, to be in control, I don't have to talk so fast. I'd rather be in control. And I'm sorry.
It's okay. No problem.
It's okay. And you know, it was it really reminded me to step back and take my time and take those pauses and learn to fill those pauses, not just stand there and wait to speak. And it was fascinating, and it's been super helpful for me on this move. And I told Kevin this. I said, man, I'm just so grateful to be doing this with you, and the way you've talked to me on this movie has just been so great, because it ratcheted me back 35, 40 years to how my career started as quickly as it did. And it was because I took my time. I did look. I did come back. So when I spoke, I meant it. I was looking somebody right in the eye. That brings me to this story. I'll tell you this real quick, man. So before 48 Hours came out, before I shot 48 Hours, I got cast. I got hired to come and do one scene in a movie, and I was in New York going to acting school. And I went to a place called the Neighborhood Playhouse, where Robert Duvall went, and Gregory Peck went, and James Caan went, and all these people. And it's a famous theater school. And I learned a lot. But so I'm in school there, and I get this chance to go to South Texas and do one scene in a movie. And it was opposite Kirk Douglas, who was also a childhood idol, right? I mean, I saw Spartacus and I wanted to be Kirk Douglas, you know? So I had one scene, and the scene was a big scene, because it started like at the end of a long driveway, and you know, the camera pans up, Kirk drives in his car, and then when he steps out of the car, it switches to a steady cam that follows him back, you know, up the steps and into the sheriff's office. And I played the sheriff's deputy. And I was 21 or 22 years old at this time, 22, I think.
Very young.
Very. And I had one exchange, you know, with Kirk. You know, he says, I'd like to see the sheriff. And I said, he's not here. And he said, when's he going to be back? And I had a response to it, like, well, I don't know when he's going to be back. Okay. And because the shot was so long, and he had to go all the way back down the road and get back in the car and do the whole drive up and get out and walk in and come up, end up at my desk. And we got ready to shoot, and he does it, walks right up to my desk and says, I need to see the sheriff. And I completely froze, couldn't say a word, couldn't get a word out. And the director goes, cut. What's the problem, man? And I said, I don't know. I'll get it. I'm sorry. So they reset. Kirk goes all the way back down the road. Action. Drives all the way back up, gets out of the car, walks to my desk. I need to see the sheriff. And I went, and I froze. And the director goes, cut. And all in my mind, all I could think of was, holy shit, I'm talking to Spartacus. And so the director gets mad. He gets mad because it's wasting time, it's costing money. And he's kind of yelling at me a little bit, like, come on, man, what are you doing? I mean, don't you know your lines? I mean, how hard is this? And I'm just apologizing. And Kirk goes, you know what, everybody? Todd's going to be fine. Everybody take 5 minutes. Everybody take 5. And Kirk Douglas walks up behind me, and I'm sitting in my chair, and he starts rubbing my shoulders like this. Kirk Douglas.
No way. No way.
He rubs my shoulders for a minute, and he's talking to me. He says, you first time on film? And I go, he's rubbing my shoulders. He goes, a little nervous? I go, and he stops and he comes and sits on my desk so that he's facing me. And he goes, "Kid, same thing happened to me my first time on film. Same thing." He goes, "But here's what you got to think about. This is all you got to do, okay? When I walk up, you just look me in the eye and tell me the truth." And I can do that. And he goes, "I know you can." And he goes, "Let's go. Todd's ready to go." And he goes back down the road, gets in the car, drives up, gets out, walks in, walks to my desk and says, "I'd like to see the sheriff." And I go, "Sheriff's not in right now." He goes, "Well, you know when he'll be back?" I go, "No, I don't know when he's going to be back, but I'll sure be, take your name for you," or whatever it was. And the director goes, "Cut." And the director runs over and he goes, "What the fuck? Why didn't you do that when I was talking to you?" You know, Kirk gave me the secret.
Yeah.
Best advice anybody ever gave me. Look me in the eye and tell me the truth. How about that?
How about you write a book, sir?
I know. Everybody says
I'll help you write it if you want.
I got stories, man.
Yeah.
I've been around long enough that, I got to meet all of those guys. I met Brando. I met Gregory Peck. I dated his daughter for half a second. I met Robert Mitchum, dated his daughter. I met John Wayne. I met those guys.
Work with Duvall.
Yeah.
With Douglas.
Yeah.
So I was curious, is it true you were going to be in Fandango? What's the story? What role were you supposed to play?
How did you find this out?
I have my sources.
That's very funny.
Because it's my very favorite Kevin movies.
I don't know how you found that out, man. It's very funny.
I did my research.
And no disrespect to any actor that got that movie. But the casting director, I went in and read for that movie. And she said, "Oh my God, because it was about a bunch of guys in Texas."
Yeah.
And it was written by a guy from Texas.
Kevin Reynolds.
Yeah. Who's still a really good friend of mine today.
By the way, can I interject here?
Yeah.
I don't want to take up longer than it should, but I put together a retrospective on Fandango within the film festival in my hometown. It's going to take place late September, and Kevin Reynolds and Chuck Bush are going to be attending.
Kevin Reynolds and who?
And Chuck Bush, one of the guys in the movie,
Yeah.
big burly guy.
Burly guy.
Both guys are going to be attending.
So, very good, man.
It's like 40 years since the filming, because it was filmed in 83, I think.
Yeah.
And it's 2023, so it's 40 years. And since the movie was so extremely well received in Italy when it came out, not as much in the US, but in Italy it was embraced, and it's become a cult in Italy. I thought, why not celebrate it in my own country, in my own hometown?
Well, I'll tell you what, I may be in Italy in September, so if I am, I'll try to come.
Hit me up, and I'd be glad to host you and take you to a fine food place and host
Have you talked to Kevin Reynolds?
What's that? Sorry.
You talked to Kevin Reynolds?
No, the festival's director talked to him, emailed him. I just put Chuck and the festival's director together, and we had a few Zoom calls. But I originated the idea. The idea came from me. And so since I knew both of these guys, the director and Chuck, I thought I should, get them together and let's work this out. And so we were able to get Kevin Reynolds, and Chuck also is coming.
Sure.
So,
well, good, man.
Sorry for the interjection.
That's a good story. I've always loved that movie. But yes, I read for that. I auditioned for that movie, and the casting director, I was thinking of, no, it's a different casting director. had told me on the spot, "Oh my God, you're so perfect for this. You're going to be in this movie." And I called my agents and said that too, right? Oh, Todd's the guy. He's the guy. Not for Kevin's role,
Yeah.
different role.
Different role.
And you know, I was waiting for the offer, and my agent called me and said, "Man, you're not going to get that role in Fandango." And I go, "What happened? What happened?" And the casting director cast a guy with a famous last name.
I get it. Okay.
Because she was trying to cast his father in something else.
All right.
And she felt like it was kind of a feather in her cap to do this. And I had never met Kevin Reynolds. And so flash forward like 10 years, and I've made Silverado, and Kevin Reynolds and Kevin Costner are still buddies. And we all go on these fishing trips, and which turn into big, week-long drunken fun fishing trips. And I met Kevin Reynolds, and I told him that story one night. I wasn't going to tell him, but I told him that story after just enough cocktails.
Yeah.
and Kevin Costner didn't know that story either. And both of them were like, "Dude, seriously, oh man." And Reynolds said, "I don't think she ever showed me your tape, your audition."
Wow.
Because I would have remembered that.
Yeah.
And he said, "You should have been in that movie." And Costner said, "You should have been in that movie." So,
well, that's another great story, by the way. So how did you get involved with Horizon? Was it just as simple as Kevin picking up the phone and saying, "Hey Todd, I want you to be a part of it. I want you to be part of this"?
Yeah, it was. No audition, no nothing. And he said, because I've known about it for 15 years.
Yeah.
He sent me the script of Horizon 15 years ago, and it was a one movie. And after he did Hatfields and McCoys, he rewrote it as like a mini series. And then he got on Yellowstone, and he thought, "Nah, I'm gonna go bigger than that." So here we have movies that are going to be in the theaters and then go to television, and nobody's ever done that before. So once again, Kevin thinks really big. He bets on himself.
Yeah.
Constantly. And
he goes for it.
He goes for it. And he did that with Dances with Wolves.
Yep.
A lot of people don't know it, but when that movie went over budget and over time, and the studio said, "Yeah, we're going to give you some more money, but we're going to cut back your profit participation." Kevin said no, and he gave back his salary so he could retain his profit share because he believed in it.
He believed in the movie.
And look at what happened.
How it turned out, and
that movie made, won 8 Academy Awards and did almost $500 million at the box office.
Yeah, I think it did like 500 million.
Yeah,
even more internationally and plus domestically.
So his profit share on that movie was big.
Yeah, and he owns the movie, so
isn't that crazy? So he's a smart guy, man. I've learned a lot from him over the years. Just one of the guys that used to go on those fishing trips was a power entertainment lawyer. And we would be sitting around having dinner, and drinks. And I used to sit there and watch Kevin ask him questions legal questions about film and film rights and contracts and, equity deals and stuff like that. And man, I took mental notes. And so now I do it all the time. I'm a producer too, and I've got a company, and
I know.
I own the rights to 27 projects, and I learned, I'm about halfway to being a lawyer. I can write acquisition documents, I can write rights agreements, I can write all that, and I still have a lawyer vet it,
Yeah.
make sure, but I can do all that work, and I've negotiated tons of rights deals, and I learned a lot of things from that guy. Learned a lot of things from Kevin. And that lawyer became my very first lawyer in Hollywood.
There you go.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about, but I think you've already answered it. What has been the most significant experience you have had as of up until now on Horizon? But you've said, you've answered that Kevin brought you back on track to being like a film actor in the way you approach a scene.
I really feel that
of a line.
some of it is, we hadn't been on set together in quite a few years, and The Postman was quite a while ago, and that's the last time he directed me. And when I moved back to Texas a few years ago, and so we don't see each other as much as we used to. And I knew how much this project meant to him because it's his, he first wrote it like more than 15 years ago. And I think he wrote the first script 20 years ago. And it's been in his mind. It's a passion project. And so I was very precious with it. I was very precious about it. And I wanted to not screw it up, especially since he wrote the script, right? When somebody does that, you take the dialogue very preciously. You don't change it around. You don't ad lib and make things up. And especially with a guy that's as specific as Kevin is, because he sees it. He knows exactly what he wants, moment to moment to moment. And there can be 8 actors in that scene, and he can tell all of them, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. This is when you stand up. I want you to stand up and walk out. And that's when you see him go, and you look back at the group and go, like, where's he going? He's got it mapped out in his head that specifically. And so I think when I got
and the same with dialogue, with words, right?
not long. I think when I got to Horizon, I was super conscious of that, and it made me it leads to what I said to you before, that I was afraid to, I wasn't afraid, but I just found myself not taking those pauses and not really looking at the river or the horse or the mule or the person or the gun, and then saying my lines, and I found myself being unsure. And Kevin picked up on it. He's a very intuitive guy. He picked up on it. And he came over to me one day and he goes, man, you seem like you're nervous. And I went, well, I think I am. I think I'm a little nervous, man. It's been a while since you've directed me, and this is a big one, and it's important, and I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. He goes, well, let all that shit go. Just do what you know how to do. And that was very helpful to me. That he sensed it from me, that I was being too precious and too, and when you get precious like that, and you all of a sudden you tense, you get tense,
you get frozen, right?
Yeah, you don't do what you can do best. And he saw it, and he walked over and he said it to me, and it changed like that, so I feel a lot better now. I feel way more comfortable and
freed up.
Yeah. And
I wanted to ask you about Witchboard. Is it true you would like to make a sequel to that?
It is true, but interestingly, I was working on that with the original producers about 2 years ago, and then you may remember my co-star in that movie died, Tawny, And so we just stopped. But
Mhm.
now there is a sequel being made. And interestingly, there's been some press about it. There's an actor that's in Horizon that's the star of the new Witchboard. I didn't work with him, but he's in movie one, and
Uh-huh.
he's going to be a star. He's a kind of a big deal. There's a lot of heat on him. His name is Jamie Campbell Bower.
Mm.
He's a gunfighter in the first movie of Horizon. I saw he was working with Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm on a wagon train, so I didn't work in any of that stuff. But yeah, he's going to be the star of the new Witchboard.
New Witchboard.
Yeah.
Uh, Last but not least, I'd like to know what's the status on Six Miles Creek, and you have written that. You're hopefully going to direct that, and it's kind of a modern western in a way, from what I've read.
No way.
And what are your hopes for it?
It is. Well, it's about a lot of things, but really it's about family and the power of love. But it is like a modern Western. And throughout the course of my career, I told you my dad was in the Navy and was a fighter pilot. My uncle was a Marine officer who fought in Vietnam. And so really for the entirety of my whole career in Hollywood, I have done things that supported veterans causes and the children of fallen soldiers and things like that. I sit on the board of a foundation that assists the families of fallen soldiers and helps get them through school and college and stuff like that. And so I I'm sure it's probably true in Europe as well, with your own veterans, but in the US, somewhere between 22 and 26 veterans a day commit suicide. They stick a pistol in their mouth because, they can't deal and they didn't get treatment. They didn't get the help they needed. And, in Hollywood for the last 15 or 20 years, if anybody made a movie about a veteran with PTSD, they were always made him a serial killer or, a rapist or a bad guy or something, right? And I set out to make 6 Mile Creek about a veteran with PTSD, but make him the hero. And that's what it really is. And he has to overcome his own demons to save the lives of the woman and her 16-year-old daughter who saved his life after he crashes his motorcycle on page 3. They say they find him in a creek bed called 6 Mile Creek. And that's what it is in a nutshell. They save his life, and while his Harley is getting repaired, he does the only thing he knows to do, which is go help them fix up this little ranch that they live on as a way to repay them for saving his life. And relationships develop. He bonds with the girl. He falls for her mother and she falls for him. And, but his wife has left him 10 years earlier and took his daughter when she did. And, he's one of those guys that thinks, the only place that I'm free is on the back of that motorcycle. And it's based on a guy that I know, that part of it. So I flash back throughout the course of the movie, like three times, really intense, like in your face, right into the middle of a super intense firefight in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And those firefights are based on a guy that I know too, different guy. And so you see why he suffers from PTSD in this movie, but they're very quick, very intense. It's just in close up the whole time. It's just like bullets are hitting the wall all around him. The moment I open on it. And I don't know. It's the best thing I've ever written. I've written several scripts, and yeah, I'm going to direct it. And I think thanks to Horizon, I may already have the financing to do it. So Horizon's doing a lot for me.
Yeah. And it sounds great, by the way, 6 Mile Creek. It's the kind of story, that's the kind of story I like to see. And
yeah,
Are you going to be shooting a spaghetti western kind of reboot of the genre in 𝙬𝙗𝙖𝙗𝙯, Spain? Is that true? When is that happening?
It's true, yeah. It's called Challenge at Crown Valley, and they first came to me as an actor. It's been a few years ago, and we had a Zoom call, and none of these guys speak English. They're all Italian, and so we had to have a translator. And we had a very nice meeting, and they said, "Can we email the script to you?" And I said, "Sure." And they came to me as an actor to play really the second lead in the movie, which is the bad guy. And that character is based on Henry Fonda's character in Once Upon a Time in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And the character's name is Frank, which is Henry Fonda's character's name.
Yeah.
So they send me the script, and I read it, and I like the story, but it was written in Italian and translated into English. So the syntax was all off, that didn't make sense. And it was like, I'm the bad guy. And I would say, yes, well, now I'm going to draw my pistol and shoot you. And you just can't talk like that. So I got back on a Zoom call with him, and I asked him, would you let me fix the dialogue? And they said, yes, do it. So I did, and I plowed into it. And originally I thought I can fix this in like a week. And as I got into it and really started breaking the script down, I realized there was a lot of problems. So I rewrote every page. I cut entire sequences out. I cut characters out. I put new sequences in. I built the character arcs for all of the main characters. And it took me 3 months. I'm a writer myself, but when you're rewriting somebody else,
yeah,
I had to think, man, can I really take this out? So I had to make notes to myself about why I did it. And, it took a long time. So I sent it back to him, and I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks. And I thought, oh man, now they're pissed off. And I get an email that says, we would like to have another Zoom call. So we set it up and did it. And the director, who I think is a protege of Sergio Leone, no joke.
What?
Said through the translator, you've saved our movie, and we love everything, and we want you to produce it, and we also have 3 more that we want you to produce. And this first one, Crown Valley, is we want to shoot in Almeria, Spain, in the exact location where Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was shot. And so that's the plan. I'm out trying to raise a little bit of money for it. We've got some Italian financing already coming in. The Italian government is very excited about this. And Italy's biggest distributor, I want to say it's UCI, is a production partner on it. So everybody's excited about it. And
wow.
Me too.
That's so great. I'm so very glad for you, Mr. Allen. Or should I call you Todd? I don't know what do you like best, Mr. Allen, or would you like me to address you?
Call me Todd.
Okay. I'm very glad for you because your story is fantastic. I mean, you started out like with your naivete and trusting your guts, and you like made your way through the Hollywood and echelon, whatever. And
I survived, the 80s and the 90s in Hollywood when drugs were just crazy and everywhere. And, I made up my mind early on that wasn't going to be my path. And I also chose my friends very well. Kevin Costner has been my friend for almost 40 years, and Kevin Reynolds for 35, and Lawrence Kasdan for
40,
almost 40. And I've worked for Lawrence Kasdan's son, Jake, who directed Jumanji.
Yeah.
I did a play that Jake wrote, and we're all still, I just chose my friends really well, and they're still my friends today after all these years. So
I had a few more questions to ask you, but I'm gonna let you go because I've already wasted your time
No, no,
out
no.
of your time, and I hate to do that, but thank you again for your time. It meant a lot to me that you would take out this amount of time for me from your schedule, from your family commitments, and
Well, yes, thank you, man. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. And good luck to you. And we'll see if we get Crown Valley shooting in Almeria, we'll see if we can't get you down on that set and
I'd love, I'd
from
love
there.
it. I would love to come over and to meet you and just talk to you in person and introduce myself in person, which is the best thing. And I
I'm
will.
sorry I missed you in St. George, but as I said, my child was sick and in the hospital, and I had to fly out of there. So
It's the most important thing is that she's doing better, from what I understand, and that that's the bottom line, really, is health, and everything else comes second. So
yeah,
I will
well,
be writing to you my story on how Kevin changed my own life for the better. And
good.
he knows it. He and I like go back like 5 years. He's known about me for 5 years, and it's kind of it's not, maybe it sure isn't as important as your story, but I think well, it was important. It's important for me, so I think you will get something out of it.
Well, good. Yeah, please send it to me.
And again, thank you very much, Todd. You're a tremendous individual, and I can see your heart through the words you just spoke.
Well, thank you, Pietro. I appreciate it, man. I enjoyed talking with you, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. And please, if you do ever come to Italy, hit me up. You know, you have somebody here that can host you, and I would love to take you to a fine food place just to hang out and talk.
I would do it. I would do it.
All right, let's do it. Thank you, Todd, and have a great time on Horizon 2 when you go back.
I will. I leave Tuesday morning.
Give I send my regards to Gilly and everybody
I will.
and to Kevin himself.
I will. I will.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.